My son's fiancee, Abigail, well, she's not respecting me. And she needs to understand I'm the one in charge. I'm the one who gave Nathan, my son, everything that he has. And you know what? I won't listen to her lip. She will go ahead and show me the respect that I deserve.
I'm 51 male, and I'm a widowed father, and after my wife's death almost 2 decades ago, I did my best to raise my son, Nathan, while simultaneously growing my business into what it is today. It was hard for me, especially in the beginning, because my wife was the one responsible for Nathan. I had to learn to cook decent food and always be present for Nathan's well-being. Well, it all paid off because I sent a fine man off to the university, and he returned even better than when he left. This was about 5 years ago, and Nathan made sure to call all the time and visit whenever he could. It was during that time frame that my real estate business became the success that it is today. As soon as Nathan returned, he showed a lot of interest in my work, making me even more proud of the fact that he's my son. He had studied business administration and had mentioned wanting to be a marketer in the past, but when he told me that he wanted to assist with the business instead of getting regular job post-graduation, I was more than happy to show him the ropes. Working with Nathan gave me another joy in life. He was so eager and quick to learn, and now I'm more than certain that my son will make the business better than it currently is, as soon as I decide to hand it over to him. Now to the crux of the matter. A little over 2 years after Nathan graduated from university, he began to date this young lady, Abigail. I was quite happy for him because that was the first time that he'd ever mentioned a woman to me. If he dated while schooling, I really don't know. I did not have an opinion of Abigail when I first met her because she seemed a little flaky. I would think that she was one way only for her to prove me wrong with her actions. It was a bit confusing, but my son was smiling from ear to ear when talking to her, so I pushed aside my thoughts and made sure to look for the qualities Nathan saw in her. Physically, she was okay. She also had a very nice smile, and based on the way she made eye contact whenever we spoke, confident and well, Nathan was the same, but it took him a bit of time to develop the confidence he had now. I was satisfied with his choice and became happy about it as time went by. Abigail constantly checked up on me when she and Nathan were dating. Sometimes she would bring home cooked meals for me and Nathan whenever we were working late and would stay and help with the cleaning. At first, I thought she was doing way too much for somebody who was dating my son. Nathan had even told me that she had been that way when they first started dating. Abigail had told him that her mother had raised her that way, and it was another reason for me to like her. My conversations with Abigail were also interesting. I learned that she lived with just her mom, had worked 2 part-time jobs when in high school, and was really interested in the arts. She told me she had dreams of being a successful blogger, having studied literature. She didn't really look the type, and while I thought she would be better off in another profession, I did not make any comments voicing out my thoughts though. At least she was passionate about it. I'd read a few of her articles, and she was really good at what she did. Nathan and Abigail got engaged a few months ago. I was happy for them, and my joy increased when I found out that I was going to be a grandfather soon. It was official that my son was getting married to Abigail, so I started just treating her like a daughter-in-law, and I offered her a job as a blogger for my business. It was a win-win for both of us, and while she had almost no experience in the field, grew to learn a lot with my and Nathan's help. Her writing gained me a new client last week, and while it was slow in showing results, I was sure that Abigail's passion and work would be extremely beneficial to the business in the near future. 2 days ago, the strangest thing happened. I'd called both Nathan and Abigail over to discuss more wedding plans and the future of the business. I'd told Nathan that he would be responsible for the business whenever he was ready. The excitement on his face was enough for me to know that I've made the right decision by mentioning it to him. I'd initially wanted it to be a surprise, but decided against it. This was business, not a party after all. Abigail was so happy as well, and I told them I wanted to be a family business. She was responsible for blogging and advertisements while Nathan would take over the rest. Once that was settled, we began to talk about the wedding. I don't know if I'm exaggerating this, but the huge smile on Abigail's face fell drastically. I assume it was just nerves. The wedding is slated to happen in 3 months, by the way, but Abigail had not mentioned inviting a single person from her family. It was pretty appalling, and I had not wanted to ask, thinking it probably just skipped her mind. What with the preparations and pregnancy, I brought it up when discussing with Abigail, and she seemed rather upset when I did. I tried probing, and she dismissed my questions rudely. Even Nathan tried to find out what the problem was, but Abigail was not interested in opening up. She quickly walked out of the meeting, and I wondered if I've crossed a line I should not have crossed. I tried calling, but I got no response from her, so I decided to visit instead. I'd gotten a few gifts as a peace offering, and that was the first time in 2 years that I've known Abigail that she's gotten that way with me. Abigail had not even bothered to see me. Nathan told me that she could get that way sometimes. Isolating herself when she gets upset. Another thing I never would have guessed, given her confidence and usual cheerfulness, it was quite strange and I didn't know what to do about it. I even had to talk to a friend about this, and he said to give her time to come around, and I'm quite mad at myself. I didn't know this was going to happen, or I never would have mentioned it in the first place. Update number 1. Abigail's fine and we're on talking terms now. But ever since that day, she has not been the same, towards me at least. She's still affectionate towards Nathan, and in the beginning I tried to let it off my chest, and she had no problem with my son. I wasn't the one that she was getting married to after all, and as long as she treated Nathan right, I was fine with her. But it wasn't as easy as it seemed, and in the end I caved and found a way to ask her why she was so upset with me. Calls did not work, so I had to go see her. I talked to Nathan, and after listening to me, had agreed to help me give a proper discussion with Abigail. Usually she knew that I was visiting, and would claim that she did not want to see me because she simply was not feeling well. One time, Nathan said that she'd fallen asleep when she heard it was me at the door. It was that serious, and if she was going to be a member of my family, I was going to have to do something about it. Abigail was quite surprised when she saw me. Nathan had told me when to come around, saying he would step out, which would Abigail out of her room when she needed something. I'd caught her in the kitchen and cajoled her into having a discussion with me. I apologized profusely, and in the end she forgave me. Apologizing as well, it was like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders. I joked about missing her calls and fussing, and it was like everything was just back to normal. Abigail was still the same after my discussion with her. She did not call at all, and neither did she take any of my calls when I wanted to check up on the baby. I usually did not call her. She did most of the calling, but I guess it was my guilt that was in play here. Nathan told me that it was only a matter of time, then reminded me that Abigail was pregnant, but I was still not convinced. People don't change that much overnight, upset or pregnant or not, and I paid Abigail a visit again, watching out for facial expressions and body language, and, well, the woman who was usually thrilled just to see me looked at me like I was a fly that kept on pestering her. So, I pushed that aside and asked the usual questions, how she was, if she was eating healthy, etc. She managed to answer a few of my questions before excusing herself to go to the bathroom. My paranoia simply got the best of me. So I went upstairs, formulating an excuse in my head as I did. Abigail really was in the bathroom, but she was on the phone talking to a guy called Hill. I assumed it was her doctor, but there were some things that she said that did not sound right. I'm keeping details to myself because I want to be totally sure before revealing anything. Abigail caught me, as embarrassing as this is, and that was the first time she insulted me and raised her voice. I told her that I was worried about her because she spent too much time in the bathroom, and she told me to stop following her around because I was apparently becoming a stalker. I understood where she was coming from, and some of you reading this might assume the same thing and side with Abigail, but that's not the case at all. And when I tried explaining this to her, she shut me up and kicked me out of the house. Needless to say, my embarrassment grew as I drove back home, but so did my curiosity. Who is this Hill? Was he really a doctor? Because she spoke to him informally and gave inappropriate replies, or was Abigail right about me being too overbearing? I'm just looking out for her and my son, but maybe she's taking things the wrong way because of it, and I'll try giving her the space I believe that she needs. Maybe that'll make things a bit better. Update number 2. Abigail had traveled to meet with her mom 2 weeks ago, and she's back now in more ways than one. My future daughter-in-law's back to being her cheerful self. She called me as soon as she returned, and I was quite pleased that she did. That did not stop me from giving her the space I promised I would earlier. I did not call or visit and occasionally saw her when I stopped by my former workplace. Abigail had insisted on working till her final trimester, which was shocking to me. I don't know if many women are like that, but it's very admirable. I went over to Nathan's a few days ago. A previous client of mine was interested in a resort. Because it was entirely new project and I was the one contacted, I had to go see Nathan. I called him and told him I'd visit during the weekend to discuss further details. Well, this was new to me, and of course new to my son, but if we both agreed to take on the project, I was sure that we would be able to figure something out. Unfortunately, when I got to the house, Nathan was absent. He had to step out to get something urgently for Abigail, and the same woman who asked what the hell I was doing at my son's house. I had told her that Nathan knew about my presence, and she let me in reluctantly. In fact, she was inhospitable right from the moment she opened the door. Nathan told me she was having mood swings on that particular day and had to get her street food. I thought all that was just an excuse. Sure, she was pregnant and her hormones might have been in play, but she was being rude. And she did not apologize, when in fact I did nothing wrong. Also, I ended up not taking on the project. Better safe than sorry. Abigail got even worse as time passed, and I just remember sometime last week when she and Nathan came over. Nathan had stepped out for some time to use the bathroom, and I decided to fill the awkward silence by asking how things were at work, and if she needed any help. Abigail responded by saying that she and Nathan had everything under control, and that I should not worry about anything because I had no hand in the business anymore. I don't know about you, or whether it was one of the tones that she used with me, but I did not like what she said. I was even about to ask why she would answer me in the manner she did, but Nathan chose to show up at that moment. Abigail brought up our discussion herself, then proceeded to make her reply to me sound as sweet as honey. Nathan promised that everything was fine at the company, but at this point I could not care less. Abigail did not seem as perfect as she was when I first met her. She used to be attentive and pleasant to be around, but now I found myself dreading being in the same space she was in. Was it all because of the question I asked about her not inviting her relatives to the upcoming wedding? Or was she just pretending from the very beginning to gain my approval and trust? I even thought it's because she was pregnant, but that could not have been it. I don't know. I have not been around so many pregnant women, but I knew for a fact that its strange behavior was constant. Then it was something to be looked into. The last and final straw for me was a call that I had with her concerning one of her articles. That was the first time she slipped up ever since she started writing for the business. It wasn't a major mistake and did not cost the business any clients, but it easily could have. I've pointed out the error, and Abigail got upset almost immediately. She asked why was I always poking my nose in matters that did not concern her, then told me that I was starting to get on her nerves. I forgot all about the fact that she was pregnant, and questioned her as well. I asked why she was constantly rude to me, and then asked who Hill was. Abigail began to sob. I didn't know that she could be so dramatic either. Well, then told me that she knew I've eavesdropped on her conversation. Abigail claimed that I was not the father-in-law that she'd grown to love and care for, then told me that she was not interested in speaking to me before ending the call. I later got a call from Nathan, who sounded upset with me, most likely. She would have told the story in a way that favored her. I realized a few things yesterday as I sat down to reflect on everything. One of them was that Abigail did not change. I was just starting to see her true colors, and I did not like them at all. It really would not have bothered me if she was a random person, but she was about to get married to my child, and I was scared for him. Especially if I was right about her. I had not had a difficult marriage, but the little I've heard from business associates and my small circle of friends, marriages like that were usually harder on the man. I did not want that for my son at all. Another thing that, was Abigail had completely dodged the question I asked her. I don't know who Hill was even till now. My mind was already coming up with answers, and I did not like any of them. Then there was the issue of her little vacation. She could not have been with her mom given the obvious bone of contention between her and her family. Or was all that pretense as well? It most likely was not a hotel either. I'd known if she used any of the company's money, so where exactly did she go to? Getting answers to these questions would involve me being extremely nosy like Abigail claimed that I was. I'll admit I overstepped some of my boundaries, but I was only doing all that for my son. Besides, she had not even bothered defending her actions and made me seem like the bad guy when relaying all of our interactions to Nathan. If that was not a cause for worry, then I don't know what is. I hope all this is in my head. I'm not as busy as I used to be, so I might just be a middle-aged man conjuring up stories because he's bored. Update number 3. I almost can't believe I was right about everything. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Abigail was not an honest person, and I managed to expose her to Nathan. I can't imagine the disaster my son and my business would have gone through if I had not done the digging that I did. The first thing I did was find out who Hill was. At that point, that was the one thing that bothered me the most. Her rudeness could wait, but I needed to know who that man was. It took a while, but I managed to find out. I obviously could not get her phone, but I managed to go through the landline's phone record to see if I could get what I wanted. It took a while, but I managed to find a number that called a lot about a half year ago. If my calculations were correct, it was about the time that Nathan got engaged, and probably around the time Abigail got pregnant. I guessed that was Hill and copied the number, then called him the next day, and I did not know if he was a doctor, so I planned to fake an emergency. If he was, then I'd know. If he wasn't, then I wasn't sure what I'd do then. I planned to involve Nathan and make him understand that Abigail was not who she claimed to be. I called Hill, and after confirming who he was, told him that a friend had recommended him as a doctor to me. He said he wasn't one. That clarified one part of my confusion. I didn't know what else to say to him, so I apologized for bothering him and ended the call. The next part of my plan was the riskiest of all. I sent Abigail a message saying I had to meet with her or expose her to Nathan. I knew she was going to respond because of the final clause, and after setting up the time and place, planned the questions I was going to ask carefully. Abigail was tense and quite antsy when I met her, which further made me believe that whatever it was she was hiding was huge. And I started by asking her who Hill was again, and when she refused to give me an answer, showed her most recent call with him. I thought of lying to her and telling her that I knew who Hill really was, but I could have gotten caught. I told her that I would tell Nathan about him if she did not tell the truth. And Abigail told me that she was her former boyfriend. I could tell she wasn't being totally honest. She had not made any eye contact when saying that to me, so I decided to take the next risk, accusing her. I told her that she was lying and that I was sure that the child she was carrying was for Hill, whoever he was. The shock I saw in her face told me that I was right. It was like watching a deer caught in the headlights. I asked that question because the possibility existed, and I did not care if I ended up being wrong. It was better to know for a fact than to keep wondering about the truth and what it really was. I walked out on her then, and she called me back many times, but I was having none of it. I went straight to the office and told Nathan everything. I told him that Abigail was most likely on her way to the office, and in a few minutes we watched her walk in there. Abigail was quiet, not knowing what I said or if I've said anything at all, but Nathan said I've told him everything, and she began to apologize. She said she just wanted to secure a future for her unborn child and told Nathan she really loved him. He was quiet as he listened to her beg for his forgiveness. So I decided to ask the questions I needed answered. That was how I knew that Abigail's disrespect started after I've handed the business over to Nathan. I'd totally forgotten about that and felt stupid for thinking it was all because of the issue with her relatives. I asked who she went to visit during her vacation, and when she had not answered, I knew it was somebody specifically, automatically. She loved my son, my foot. That woman was in it just for the money. Nathan walked out of the office, and I stared at Abigail, wondering how she could be so heartless. Nathan clearly loved her and was willing to do anything for her and her unborn child, only to find out that she had only been using him. I felt bad myself, and I had told Nathan everything at once, not giving him a chance to process the bad news properly. But I was scared that Abigail would fabricate one of her lies and have him doubt me. Abigail begged me to talk to Nathan, and for a second I felt pity for her. But I could not forgive what she did to my son. I told her to leave our lives, unless she wanted to face the law, then walked away without looking back. I don't know where Nathan had gone, but he wasn't home, and neither had he been at the office in days. He'd sent me a message saying he needed time to himself, so I let him be. I hope he gets over all this soon. Abigail really isn't worth the pain he must be going through. Final update, mini update, found in the comments section. Hey guys, I'm gonna keep this brief. The wedding's been called off. Abigail's now gone from our lives. I thought of looking for her and making her pay for what she did to Nathan, but when he told me to let it go, I dropped it. He was sad, but I've never seen him like that, and I did not know what to do to help him with it. I've also resumed work because I wasn't comfortable having my son work in the state he was in. Again, it was a wise decision on my part, because he seemed grateful when I told him I'd take over his job. Well, he's in Europe now on vacation, and he should be back in a month, and I can only hope he's over that useless woman.
So it turns out Abigail was up to no good, and she's not carrying Nathan's baby. Guys, this story was so wild. I couldn't even imagine putting myself in OP's perspective just for a second, because this story was nuts. I want to know your thoughts about it. What were you thinking, and at what point did you realize things were bad? I'd say about halfway through when OP starts digging into a little bit about what Abigail's really been up to. Guys, if you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you. And if you enjoyed today's video, go ahead, drop a like on this video. And if you want more daily videos, I release a story every single day on multiple channels, which you can find all the info down below in the description. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for daily videos. Once again, my name's Mr. Reddito, and I want you to remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.